Game on. Yes, very good. How you doing, mate? Yes, pretty good. Yeah, not too bad. How you managing everything at the moment? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Were you planning on going to England? Yeah, and any sort of like updates on what they're doing? Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, definitely going to be no no crowds, is there? There's going to be no one watching for sure. Um, and they've got what Aussie rules over here is they're figuring out what they're going to do with that, whether it's going to be behind closed doors. Like it's just chaos, like chaos with the sports side of it. So yeah, yeah. Are you still kind of able to train, or are you just kind of doing physical work and things like that? Yeah. Mm, yeah. Yeah. So how did you find last year? How was everything for you last year? Yeah. Yeah. But what I guess like how did you get into cricket? How did you start with cricket? For let's just go back to how you started getting into the sport. Did your brothers play? Oh, right. No way. I've got my youngest brother's just a year younger than me, like, and I think I owe like I owe my professional career almost to like the time that playing with him in the garden, and I think there's like that's where you kind of get your 10,000 hours in. I think like your garden cricket, and you it's not until you kind of go into a pro sport you're like, oh, actually that was a part of my as much crazy as it sounds, like that was actually a part of my training, like that was a part of my sort of journey into the sport. And the competitiveness. That's all I just remember. Like the especially as the like I'm the oldest, you're the older one, so I'm all I just want to do is beat my little brother at everything. But that competitive edge, I think, gives you it. It's a catalyst to getting you into sport, or getting you into like that higher level. Because I have no doubt that without him, or without having a sibling there where you can kind of bounce, it just would have been a lot harder. Or you probably go into a sport that's more individual, like where you're kind of on your own. Whereas a team sport, you're like, yeah, you can bounce off a lot of other people. Yeah, that's amazing that your brother your youngest brother jumps into a fourth grade and smashing it. Yeah, yeah. No, it's you were saying like the comparison of England to Australia. Cricket doesn't take too much of a precedent in the UK. Like I mean, it's such it takes such a lot to play the game of cricket. Like there's so many external things that are going on, like scorers, umpires, like the actual setup of the game. Football in England and football here in Australia as well, I guess, is the number one. But as soon as I've come over here and I've done a lot more work here in Australia, like there's so much more professionalism at a lower level in the game of cricket, because it's Aussie, it's AFL or cricket, like it's just one or the other. And yeah, when you play for the Australian cricketers are just everywhere, like they're on TV, they're in all the adverts, and like you don't see that in the UK apart from the odd sort of like Sky Sports or the odd sports channel that someone's promoting, or like Ben Stokes might be on something. But yeah, it's just a completely different ball game. How have you? So you started playing grade cricket in? Have you always been in Western Australia? Yeah. So you just was your transition into the professional game through the system, or did you through grade and then just straight into first class, or how did you get into the first class game? That's like because you do the pathway is perfectly set up over here to see that. I think the thing I've seen in Australia, that pathway is so clear. Like if you're willing to get onto it and you see the goal of just first class cricket, state cricket to begin with, there's a very clear stepping like pathway and that stepping stone that you have to take each time to get there. Um, so did you was it kind of being highlighted that you were going to go to state cricket? Like, were the media sort of saying like you're going to go to state cricket, and was there expectation on you to do it? Yeah. Yeah, so you had that own personal drive, and that if you look at like the stats of the amount of people who make it into just professional sport in alone, like whichever sport you go into, but again, cricket, and especially in Australia, there's a lot of kids doing it, and even if you get in the state squads at junior level, that by no means means you're gonna make it. That's you end up being a small statistic if you're one that actually gets contracted, a very low percentage. So getting it, there's something you have to do to kind of stand out and to be above the rest. What was it for you that you think kind of made you stand out, and was the thing that helped keep you motivated to be above the rest to make it? So it was kind of like your technique was built young, like you created a real strong, solid technique, and then when you maybe built the size, that was the thing that kick-started you to power that technique. Because I see a lot of kids now that they're like really worried that they're 13 years old and they're not whacking hundreds, and you look there and you go, physically it's going to be a lot harder for you to do, and they're putting the trust in them to have a solid technique, to be sound, of even how they're thinking about the game. I think how you think about the game as well, how you go about your tactical side of it and your mental game first, and then have that make real solid, then let your body catch up when you actually start to grow. That sounds a bit like what you were doing there. Like as soon as you hit like this marker where physically could hit the ball a little bit harder, then your technique flourished because you'd worked on it. Yeah, you finding that you're even now as a pro that's played for like many years, like are you do you kind of go back to some of those things that you were from a younger age? Like you saying your mentor was it was Wayne Andrews? Like he do you still work with him? So, so you've had like a consistent person that you're working with pretty much from being a junior. Have you is that a valuable thing for you having someone that's consistently there all the time? Because in cricket, I think having that consistent person, you can have so many different coaches as well, can't you? You can have changing coaches from certain areas. But was Wayne always at the whacker, or was he sort of out in the fringes and then came in? Yeah, it is. I think that's amazing that you've had someone, especially potentially what's gone on in the last couple of years with having that person to just go. I know personally in my career, I wish I had that individual to not even talk about the game. Like you can go and switch off. You can, like you said, go have a coffee. There's too much where you have this coach athlete relationship where, and it can get blurred sometimes where you think the coaches are judging you all the time. So if you could bring up a conversation, you don't want to be too open because you feel there could be an element of judgment within the response that you get. You hope that there's that trust level, but having someone, I think, away from the coaching setup, away from outside of the environment you're in, that whether that's a friend or if it's someone who has played the game, who's been there, done it, it hasn't even got to be within the sport you're in, just having been there in some sort of environment, bouncing those ideas off, mainly for your mental state is the thing that's going to falter at some point. And having that consistent person to just chat open and honest about just everyday life and shit in day, like that's the stuff that you want to be able to talk about. I've always wanted to ask someone who's playing for their country what it was like, first off, making that debut, like playing for your country, and especially in somewhere like Australia, because there is so much prestige around doing it. It is a huge thing over here being handed the baggy green. I just want to ask, like, what it was like that day that you got it. that's such an interesting, like, because one, doing it in an Ashes Test match, like there's nothing really bigger to do than like against England, but you had the awareness of the occasion could get to you. You didn't. I think that's a good start. Like you knew. Did you have people sort of warning you of what could potentially some warning signs of making your debut? And did you know the day before? Like, did you know a few days in advance that you were going to be playing? Yeah, and like the intensity must have been mad. Like the change of intensity. Because what is it? What is the intensity? Your job being an opening batsman is it is one of the hardest in the game because ball's moving around, everything's kind of against you. Especially if you go and do it in somewhere like the UK where the ball can move around a lot more. But still, you got brand new ball against you. You got fresh bowlers. You got pitch you don't really know what's going to do. You've seen it, but you're not 100% sure what it's going to be doing. How do you, first off, how do you manage yourself? How do you manage your process of doing your job as an opening batter? Is there things that you set in stone that you do regardless of the opposition, the pitch that you're on? And then are you like, was it a simple transition of taking it into that sort of process into Test cricket because the intensity just goes up, but keeping some sort of some sort of base level game and process that you have? Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. It's such. I like I said, I find it so fascinating because it is such probably one of the most mentally demanding parts of the game as well, being a batter and as well as being an opening batter, because there's also, as much as you train and you work on certain things, there's some elements that sometimes are just out of your control. Like you could get a really good ball, you could get a bad decision, you could get. So how have you managed the times when it's not been going your way and it's been tough? Because it does happen, and I think it's naive to think as a batter and as a player, whether you're a batter, bowler, anyone, that you're not going to have times where it's a struggle. What have you found that's been sort of a bolt hold for you to manage through tough periods? Yeah, it's not a coincidence that sort of the best players get to that kind of 30, 34 age, and then that's when their games flourish. They really do well, especially batters. Like they tend to, that's where they start to really cash in, because they've had those experiences, they've had that learning, they've failed, they've succeeded, they've figured out what's worked, they've had the the knockdowns, and then look, like you said, looking back on the past and going, oh, maybe I should have done that, and then that gives you the opportunity to go and try something and then see if that works in your training, and then you wait for your next opportunity, and then you give it another go. You were saying about like the difference in Test cricket, and obviously I had a great quote from one of my old coaches that said when he played Test cricket, John Lewis, he said it was the same game, different shirt. And he said this is exactly the same players I've played against. A lot of these players that I was coming up against, the only thing that changes in the game is just the fact that there's everything that's going on around it. You have the media hype, the talk before a game. Like obviously it's for the nation, so there's a lot more pressure on the game because it means a lot more to a lot more people collectively. But that the docuseries, The Test, I watched that with my housemate here, and that was such a great insight actually, and into how even like Langer, when the media was like hitting him in moments, and you just like, it's a circus. I think there was a little portion of the series where it was like a 15-minute about just the media and how the media sort of gets you, and you're like, wow, this is insane. And even then you had a camera crew following you guys around and in the changing room, and you're like, it's never ending. How do you manage your normal process when there's media commitments? How do you go through your normal routine that you're trying to take from professional first class cricket that's held you in good stead, and then throw it into a circus that has so many different demands on you? Was there something that you kind of, how hard is that? That must be incredibly hard. Yeah, I thought it was an amazing series. You're right. When teams open their doors and they show you that, it humanizes a lot of it. Really does. I think that was the thing about the test. It really humanized a lot of the whole situation. No one would have. I don't think there's many people that have gone through sort of like the media ringer that you have over the last couple of years and dealing with it. The thing that actually there was one of the things that attracted me to you over the last couple of years was I saw you became a yoga teacher, and you'd gone into you studied in that. And is that something you've done throughout your career, or was it something that you wanted to add in, and did that help you manage the world that kind of came to you over the last couple of years? Yeah, there was even in the test there was a little part of it where guys were doing it. Was it introduced into the team? Yeah, that's how I got into it. So when I introduced it to my career through physical doorway. So my career ended through injury, but there was no amount of yoga that was going to save the injury that I ended up getting. But like muscle tears and quad tears and hamstring tears and things like that, I was just constantly getting them. Introduced yoga from a physical point of view, and then my injuries stopped. Like those little niggles stopped, and then I was able to progress and perform better, more consistently. So gave it a big tick from the physical side. But then what started to come about was this the actual finding of like the connection with the mental side of it and the mindset that came with it, and more the fact, even if you go from, and I mentioned this in a previous podcast of talking about, if you don't really understand how much tension you hold in your body just through whatever thoughts process that's going on in your mind, and just being able to release that tension physically allows you to then start to open up a little bit more into like, oh, that's how my mind was because my body was stressed. And then you're starting to talk about a mind body connection. You're starting to talk about actually understanding your mind. Okay, well, if I'm stressed, it's usually I store that tension in maybe my shoulders so I can go and release it physically and then start to do the work on my mind a little bit later. It took me a little bit longer to bring in meditation. Probably took me about a year of practicing to then bring in meditation, but started simply and then actually was able to open up to the idea of mindfulness. And I think for me the barrier was there was no one really connecting with me as an athlete, because you're egotistical as a young kid getting into your sport, and you you don't want to be seen as doing yoga because you think it's only for the ultra flexible like hippies that are off on mountains, and like it's just not marketed to you as a male dominant athlete. So and then even that, like in a team sport, if you're seen doing it within a team sport, sometimes people can I've had everything said to me before about doing yoga, like of what it means about me and what I'm sort of the sort of person I am, sort of thing. But fundamentally it was the thing that allowed me to feel better in my body and then in my mind as well. And that it gave me a consistent thing to come back to. If I had a good day or if I had a bad day, I could come off the field, go back to the hotel, and I used to go and clear out conference rooms at hotels and go and set my mat up so that I wasn't bothering my roommate, and I was just away somewhere where I could have my moment to de-stress, to just completely take all the noise away, and then that half an hour of calm has a massive knock-on effect. You might see it instantly, physically, straight away of how your body feels, but your mind begins to change down the road. It is your kind of 10,000 hours of practice, I guess. Have you found that meditation helped your game, or like your sort of again, because batting is predominantly mental, essentially, like it's how you play the game inside your head is a big part. So did you find it helped your concentration as an opener, like as a literally technically within your game? Mm. Yeah. That's a really amazing point, actually, that you do have to come back to everyday life. I think you hit it nail on the head that you do that that meditation practice and you think that's it. I'm all good. Nothing's going to touch me. I'm untouchable. I'm untouchable now. Like that was I'm fully enlightened and I'm good to go. But yeah, I think it's where you understand it's a management tool. Over time it becomes that you know how you were talking about your process of or your habits through professional first class cricket into test cricket, and you hope they don't change because they're ingrained in you. It's about changing that ingrained pattern within you, and being able to, if someone cuts you up in traffic on the way to a game, like how you see that moment and how you react to it changes over time. Doesn't mean you're going to get it perfect every time, but you start to improve the numbers in which you are getting a better reaction and how you choose to react to a situation, which has been always interesting with how I've seen mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and more the mindfulness side of it to cricket. The more you look at a sport like cricket that's so intricate with the skills and like the movement of hands and how you can manipulate the ball with the bat and how you can manipulate the ball with just your hand movement as a bowler, like there's actually elements of mindfulness and the awareness within your body that you kind of don't realize. And I had a teammate of mine who opens the batting at Sussex, a really good friend of mine, Luke Wells, and he was talking about how when he had his best season, he was like, oh, I scored over 1,000 runs, but I was just breathing. Like the thing that I was doing was just breathing. And he was explaining it to me. I was like, that's an incredibly mindful practice that you were doing. And it was just something that whether he'd gone into the nets, he trained it, and he found that over time, this kind of mindful practice, whether he was aware of it or not, had become a habit that was then starting to serve him. But didn't mean that it worked every time. It didn't mean that it was something that was always going to work. And that is the battle. Like that's another battle that you face is yeah, I feel bulletproof. So this, you feel the expectation and you feel like that you have the right to perform now. And then when you don't perform, you're like, oh no, well, was that no good? Should I carry on doing that? Should I, what do I do? So the trap, like you said, is to be able to go back, continually do it, find that consistency. Because as you'll also know, like being consistent in your sport is what it really is about for longevity in your career. It's not about going and scoring 150 off like 70 balls and then that being the only score you get for the next year or so. It's about, can you be consistent all the time? So you translate that back to your practice in every day, and you hope that that's consistent. And that's where I also, that's the power that I found of something like meditation for me, because it gave you something to at least go straight back to start that consistency of your routine in your practice. It's definitely powerful thing. Yeah, have you been teaching many of the guys, or like getting them to get involved in it, or have you seen anyone that's been like inquisitive of it and maybe added it into their career? yeah, especially when you're dealing with things that don't go your way, like having that thing to at least go back to start that loop and bring it back round and go again. I think the what are you kind of looking to achieve over the next sort of few months? I mean, it's hard to say right now with what's going on, but is there sort of goals that you have on the horizons and um, to achieve over the next few months? Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to. I guess with everything that's so unknown, it's really tough to have any sort of idea of what you what you want to achieve over the next few months. But it's a great opportunity for people to work on themselves. I think if people if there was ever a time that someone wanted to get into sort of mindfulness and meditation and yoga or whatever it is that, or even just personal development, like going and reading, studying something, now is a great opportunity to do that because we have nothing to do right now. So there, especially as an athlete, there was literally no one doing anything. So it's a great opportunity to get. And I always found that even through people getting into something like yoga and mindfulness, the moments that I got into it was through a physical trauma. I got through it through a trauma of some sort. And like you said, you found that through the trauma that you had, it came through and was a real help towards you. And I always find that whatever it is, the people that get into it, there is something like an adversity that is in their way, and then it's something that actually comes into their life, like these practices that end up making them that bit better later on, and down the line, and they're way better off for it. So mate, I've really appreciated your time and having a chat. It's been awesome. I've really been looking forward to having it, and I really appreciate your openness and your honesty and everything. And yeah, I just hope you have a great couple of months and you're out there playing and scoring and whenever it's possible to do it. So thanks so much for joining. Cheers, Cameron.